for take 2. And welcome back to String and Story. My name is HollyAnne, and it's my job to guide you to quilt and to live with confidence. We are spending some time today chatting with my friend Frances over at Dowell, an absolutely amazing author, and she writes not only middle grades fiction but also quilty fiction. And I'm so thrilled that she's going to be joining me today. We already tried this once and had technology troubles, so I'm going to give you guys a second to rejoin me. Thank you for your patience, all of you. I think we have it figured out. We're going to give it our best go. Frances, let me know when you're here. And I'm going just to make sure, I'm going to reshare this. Share in a group. Yep. Hey, Denise! Yep, hopefully we've got it this time. Take 2. All right. Post. Let me see. Da-da-da. All right, turn that on. And Frances, just let me know when you make it over here. Hey, Debbie, I'm so glad you guys are here. As you're hopping back on, do me a favor again. I'm sorry, we lost your recommendations because I didn't keep the other video because it would be too confusing. So, yes, oh, good for you. I have fresh coffee too. I don't normally have beverages on Thursday morning, but I figure if we're going to be like sitting by the fire talking books, then we should have beverages. Make sure you guys like this video, share this video to your pages and to your friends. Please answer the question of the week and let us know about what books or podcasts you enjoy listening to while you're sewing, and you could be entered to win a copy of each of Frances's quilt fiction books, which is terribly exciting. This is currently open to U.S. residents, okay? All right, let's see if we can get Frances on here. Frances, I saw you pop on, but now I'm not seeing you. Will you do the requesty thing again? We think it was an issue of phone rotation. Technology is so temperamental. But hopefully we're going to have this sorted and squared away this time around. Ivy, I'm so glad you're back. And Linda, so glad you guys are here. Welcome, welcome. I'm so excited, guys. This is going to be great. I don't know why. Does it look dark to you? I feel like, oh, there we go. It brightened up a little bit. I feel like it looks a little bit dark. Probably because I keep moving in and out from being right up on the camera. I thought about bringing biscotti, but I decided that would be too messy. Clearly, as I just spilled coffee all over myself. Hey, Len. I'm just over here, you know, being a derp, as usual. My usual level of ridiculousness, you know, no worries. Hey, Aurelia! Who else? Jenny, did I see you pop on here? Rebecca? You like to listen to lighthearted books? Yes. Okay, I see Frances is here. And Kristen is here. Hey, friend. Okay, Frances, I don't have an add button for you still, so will you request? And then just let me know if it's giving you some weird message. Nell, you're back. I know, Linda. Aren't they wonderful? Kristen, we just need you here too. You need to come to the East Coast. Oh my gosh, Lynn, it's so not eco-friendly, but I almost always drink with a straw. I do try to use a reusable straw because I'm terrible at drinking out of cups. Crystal, I love your taste. You can do it, Frances. There should be like a little 2 people icon thing or something. I know that that is so vague and not helpful. I'm so sorry. Mitzi, what do you like to do while you're sewing if you don't listen to books or podcasts? Hey, Sherry, Mary, everybody. Here on your phone. Yes, you're on your phone. Oh, having a hard time finding the video on your phone. I'm with you now. Okay. Approving. Everybody hold your breath. There will be cheering and possibly embarrassing dancing.
Did I do it? Yay! Did I make it? Yay!
I did it!
Hello! I did it. I wish I had like a fun stand to put my phone on. And here comes Travis.
Babe,
yes. I don't know if you can see him. What's that?
Travis.
I don't know if I have enough control over my phone. I'm not coordinated enough to turn my phone to show you my dog. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to figure out a way.
Jump up in your lap in a second. Prop us up on a pile of books.
Come here, Chad.
I would hand you a stack from behind me, but that doesn't quite work.
Come here. He's not trusting.
Travis!
We're going to say hello.
Baby!
Travis.
Hey, baby! He has no idea how many people love him who have never met him.
I know. He has fans. He has fans. Okay. I'm having a bad hair day. There you go.
You know, I'm having a hair day, so maybe we'll just balance it out, right?
Hey, that's a great idea. We are now having an even hair day. That
exactly.
Is I made it on. I am so tech unsavvy. It's really, really sad. And Clifton has gone to work, so he would have solved the problem. He would have said, you didn't unlock your rotate button, and HollyAnne told you to do that. I'm like, I thought it would happen magically. I'm sorry.
Okay, I believe in technology magic too. It's totally fine. Okay, Frances, we'll see. I don't even know where to start because I'm like, I know Frances, we could just carry on, but why don't you introduce yourself maybe for folks who don't know you?
Okay.
Maybe there's some, I don't know.
I think there are probably a lot. It's very nice. Sometimes people say, I've never heard of you before. I'm sorry. I'm like, it's okay. That's all right. That's like when I go and so I'm a writer. And I write quilt fiction, but my career has been writing children's books. And I do school visits. And I will take questions at the end of my presentation. And so often a kid will raise his or her hand and say, are you famous? And I say, I am famous in this room. Outside of this room, I'm not. But it's an interesting thing with writers. Facially, even J.K. Rowling can go to the store unrecognized. I don't have her name recognition, working on that, but I'm a writer. And the reason why HollyAnne and I are chatting today is because I do write quilt fiction. I'm also a quilter. A few years ago, I decided that I wanted to write novels about quilting. I've always written for children. I've always written fiction for children. I've written other things for adults, but I wanted to write about quilt making because I love it. And that's how I process. Anything I love, anything I'm passionate about, I want to write a story about. I'm not an academic. I'm not a scholar. So I don't want to, write papers. I hate writing papers. I'm a terrible paper writer, but I love writing. I love writing stories.
You're so good at speculating and discussing things as if you're going to write a paper about it. Just for the record.
I like talking. Talking is easy. I just read it was a tweet from another children's book author saying, I hate interviews where they send you the questions, like they email the questions, because then you have to write. Talking is easy. Writing is hard. So that
makes me feel better about my lack of preparation for this then.
So anyway, I have a novel, Birds in the Air, which came out a couple years ago. And I keep saying that the sequel is going to come out, and it will. And I think it's going to come out this year. I had hoped it was going to come out last year or the year before. That didn't happen. And then I have a collection of short stories called Margaret Goes Modern. But my big project, and for the people at home, for the viewers
I
at
have
home.
visual aids.
That's very nice. You are prepared. But for a long time, I've been working on a historical novel, a historical quilt novel called Friendship Birds in the Air. No, it's Friendship Album 1933. It is set in 1933 in a fictional town in Ohio called Milton Falls, which is loosely based on the town of Ashland, Ohio, where I've never been, but one of my best friends is from. I just thought that would be fun. And so I have a map of Ashland, Ohio, where I get all my street names. And it's about a group of 5 quilters who come from pretty different backgrounds and get together in a quilting bee, and they're there for all different reasons. And I had written about, 150 pages when I thought a great idea would be to podcast the book while I was writing it, to do podcast episodes, to do it, it's a work in progress. I am now up to 418 pages. There's going to have to be a sequel because I can't resolve it in one book. It's going to be 500 pages long. But so starting in June, I think I started posting episodes, and it's the podcast is called the Quilt Fiction Podcast, and I post an episode every week. They're usually between 20 and 30 minutes long, and cover a chapter or 2 of the story. And it's been incredibly fun to do. I really like reading out loud, although I have to tell you, I've got 5 characters and I have to do 5 different voices. And sometimes when I re-listen, I'm like, oh, you didn't do that voice right. Or One of the characters is African American, and I just make her sound a bit more Southern because I can do Southern. And in fact, I can't do an Ohio accent. So everyone either sounds like this, like I'm speaking right now, or they sound Southern. That's all I can do. But I do love reading.
It always tells me because then I'm like, oh, they're in North Carolina. No, they're in Ohio. Where are they?
Where are they? No one knows. No. Well, here's my excuse. And so the great thing about it being a work in progress is I can just make stuff up as I go along. And, you know, during the Great Migration, which is really about Blacks coming out of the South into the North, into the Midwest, and even as far as California, whites came out of like West Virginia. There, you know, particularly as the auto industry got going. And factories got mechanized and they needed more workers. So a lot of people from West Virginia went to Ohio. So that's why all my characters sound Southern, because they're really from West Virginia. Or have roots in West Virginia. And also, like, when you watch movies based in the 1930s, everyone, you know, and it's like, you know, everything based on Steinbeck, you know, everybody does. Anyone who is not, everyone either sounds like they're vaguely British, right, and sort of the upper crust kind of movies, or they sound Southern and rural. That's what rural sounds Southern. So anyway, that's my excuse. But anyway, I'm having a great time, and we've really grown a good audience for the story, and so that's been fun. And I've just recently created a closed group on Facebook. There's a quilt fiction page, but we did a closed group about, I think it's 2 weeks old, and it's so much fun. It is such fun. I love these people already. And people are telling stories. We talk about quilts. We have a bee in Friendship Album 1933. Their bee meets every Wednesday. So we've had in our closed group, in our club, it's called the Quilt Fiction Club. We have our bee on Wednesdays, and really we just talk about food, because in the book, the bee has really, they eat first. It's a morning bee, and they come in and they eat cake. And as they've continued to meet, the refreshments have gotten much more elaborate. And so that's really what they do. So that's what we do at RB. And we eat, and everyone says what they're going to bring today, because this is so cool. And this for me as a writer, it's just, and someone who loves stories. People are telling stories. So yesterday, someone posted 2 pages from her grandmother's journal about,
which was amazing.
It was in her hand, because it was in the 1930s. The handwriting was legible, so that was super cool. But it was about her Singer sewing machine that she was buying on credit and making payments on. But I just thought, this is amazing that someone is sharing this with us. And, you know, I mean, I love history. I love historical ephemera. Like, you know, it's like I collect postcards. I actually collect old letters. You know, I don't even know the people. I don't care as long as they're old. And then today, so anyway, that made me think, oh, that's so interesting. And people mention their grandmothers, and because so many of us have, you know, parents who were born in the 20s or 30s. So they have pictures of grandparents who were, you know, in their young middle age or middle age in the 1930s. And so today I made it Grandmother Memory Day. And this woman named Marie posted an amazing story that I actually want to steal for my own work, about her grandmother, who was a single mother and had a truck and and was a teacher, and someone swindled her out of the truck. I won't spoil it for you. I think you should go read this story, but it's really a story about how her grandmother met her grandfather. So it's just,
I'm dropping an additional link to the group in, so people make sure.
Yes, you see that. But I feel so, I don't know. I feel like I'm the one getting everything out of this, because people are sharing these stories. And so that's what I see people are sharing their quilts, old quilts, the quilts that they're working on now, but telling stories. And then I'm also, I just posted about an hour ago, like, what were your grandmother's names? And yes, if you suspect I'm asking you, so I will have a file full of names for the Friendship Album stories. You are absolutely right. So anyway, it's very cool.
Well, we have a Blanche and a Marianne and a Liz, and then my mom's grandmother on her dad's side simply went by Bright, which was her married surname. I have no idea what her name was. I have no idea what her name was.
That's very cool. Wow. Hold on, Travis. So I'm in Durham, North Carolina, and we had a big snowstorm. this weekend, and Travis has not been out on a walk since Saturday. And it's melting now, and I'm going to take him out after we finish talking here. But so he's barking a lot because he's got cabin fever. And also I think he thinks if he irritates me enough, I will actually take him out. So anyway, sorry for the barking in the background.
He's smart.
Yeah.
It's okay. Last week we had one of my cats outside the door meowing to the point that like everyone else's cats were freaking out. Like, where's the other cat?
Yes. Yeah. Travis says that if there's like dogs on TV, he can feel like, whoa, what's going on? There are dogs in my house. So.
Yep. I was watching a video this morning that had dogs barking, and Felicia was like, where is this animal? I was like, it's okay, babe. It's in my phone. Oh, Frances, I love it so much. I just want you to keep talking. I feel like I don't even really have like really excellent questions. I just want you to keep sharing.
Well, let me tell you, since we're talking about quilt fiction and the Quilt Fiction Club and all things quilt fiction, we are doing a 12 days of Christmas.
Yes.
Now, it started Monday, and we've given away some amazing things already, including Paintbrush Studio fabrics and a big book bundle and all kinds of amazing stuff. Gift certificate to Fat Quarter Shop. Today, we are giving away HollyAnne. Yes, one of her classes, you get to pick, and then 3 patterns. And I love your patterns so much. I love your quilts. You know that. I think you're an amazing designer, and just your use of color is incredible. So how do you enter? Well, and I hope that HollyAnne will post. I think you have posted links.
I put a link to the Quilt Fiction page so that they can see the daily update.
And if you go to the Quilt Fiction page, or if you go to the Quilt Fiction blog, which is quiltfiction.com. There is a giveaway. If you go to the website, there's up on the top, the menu, there is a giveaway link. Click on that. All you have to do is enter. Now that will subscribe you to my email, which comes out, my email newsletter, which it comes out once a month, maybe. So you will not be inundated by it. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to be professional.
And it'll be charming because it's you.
And yeah. But I subscribe to a lot of newsletters, and it'd be interesting to do a study of which ones I actually open, but I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I open yours.
I was gonna say, you probably don't bother opening mine.
I do, although I'm like, I know that already. Oh, I know. Oh, that's neat. Yes, she's still doing good. But because you're my friend, I feel like I'm going to open it so that you can say I have this, because you know how many people open it. Anyway, so go to the giveaways, click on that link, and then it's going to ask you, and you enter. And you are entered for all the rest of the giveaways, which go through next Friday. You can also, and let me just tell you prizes. So go today and you might win HollyAnne, not the essence of HollyAnne. We're also coming up, we've got Bonnie Hunter's new book, String Frenzy. Hooray, we've got
That's a big one.
And fabric from Krista Watson. We have fabric from Michael Miller. We have fabric from Island Boutiques. We have, and this is amazing to me, a subscription to Quilt Folk and membership to the Quilt Show. And those are next week. Yes, so there's a lot of really good stuff. So come over, enter, and then you will also, when you enter, you will get a nice little email saying, hey, you've entered successfully, and it will give you links to all kinds of stuff. The other thing, if you go to the blog today, there's a Christmas story. It's a friendship album Christmas story.
I haven't read it yet.
Yes, but I will also be doing we'll be posting the audio version of that a week from Saturday. So I think that's the 22nd. If you rather listen. And I think audio is getting so big because we're so busy. We're in our cars, so we listen to audiobooks because we don't really have time to read our books. I mean, this is what I love about Christmas vacation. It's like I just sit on the couch and read. Once the turkey is done and the presents are unwrapped, we've eaten the turkey, and I'm like, bye, I will see you next week.
This
the house is full of food, and I have new books. But otherwise, audio, I mean, I do this. I listen to podcasts. I listen to audiobooks while I'm sewing. I listen to them in the car, and it is the thing. It is so many people. And I hear from so many people who are like, I'm so glad you're doing this via podcast, the friendship album story, because I love listening to it while I sew. Yeah. So anyway, so the Christmas story will be out on audio as well. So anyway, enter the giveaway because it's fun. It's good stuff. And it's exciting. Yeah.
And then you'll get all the news about Quilt Fiction, which is terribly exciting.
It's fun. Because, and we can talk about quilt stories, and there's so many great, there are great quilt fiction writers like Marie Bostwick and Jennifer Cheverini and Sandra Dallas, who's one of my favorites. But one of the things the author Lee Smith once said, you have to. No, actually, I think Toni Morrison said this: write the books you want to read. And so I wanted more quilt fiction because I love reading about the stuff that I'm doing. That sounds vaguely narcissistic, but if you really are into something, it's so fun to read about someone else who's doing it, whether it's a true story or it's fiction. But there's such a connection there. And for those of us who make quilts, it's like we're obsessed with it. We're passionate about it, and we just are. That's one of my favorite things when you ask someone, well, what's your quilt story? How'd you start quilting? They'll be like, well, so-and-so was having a baby. And so I thought, I'll make a quilt. And then I made that first quilt. I'm like, I'll make another quilt. And then you just never stopped, and they just, once you start, it's like you're bit by the bug. It's such a satisfying process. We're made to be creative, and it's a great way to be creative.
There's such a community with it, right? That we inherit this tradition. And so I think in our, as much as we are all, modern independent women, we still love the sense of community that has come before us and being tied into that.
Right.
And then we find our friends there too. And it's hard to make friends now, but quilting makes it so much easier.
That's right. Well, one of the reasons it's sort of like, think about, and I don't like to romanticize the past. So we'll remember life before antibiotics was very hard. But imagine you're in a farming community. You've got a lot to talk about. Everyone's bringing in the crops at the same time. Everyone's planning. So it's like you have this built-in conversation. You have so much in common. And even within families, it's like you're part of these community traditions. And we've lost that in our modern world. And yet I think as human beings, we long for connection. It's why one of the reasons we love stories, because stories connect us to one another. Yeah. But we long for community, and community is a word that gets overused, and it's in commercials now. Come to Burger King, be part of our Burger King community. I drive my kids crazy because when we go to to a restaurant, it says homemade food. I'm like, no, what? This is not homemade food. This is not home. They're just trying to make you feel a certain way. But but I think community is really important, and it's harder and harder to connect. We live such atomized lives, and so that's the way I have a lot of concerns about our lives online and the addictive nature of some social media. But I think about the friends I've made, including you, via the internet.
Yep,
and we of course we have hung out in real life, and we're real friends, but we were real friends before we met in real life. And so that to me is one of the amazing and great things about the internet. And these are real friendships that people and real connections. And as quilters, there are a lot of communities to be a part of online. So it's super cool.
It is really cool. It was so amazing to me the first time we met in person, and it was one of the first quilting in-person things I'd gone to, because I just had Ian. He was like this little peanut.
Yeah, he was such a baby.
Deep in the dysfunction of postpartum depression. But you were there, and Jen was there, and a few other people.
Pam
but
and
we've
Lynn.
been online for months, and it was so interesting to me. Not only did we know each other immediately, and it felt like, of course we're here, sitting in the back row cutting up while
being bad.
But even just as we were walking around, at one point, Jen came over and picked up Ian and was doing something with him. Just that there were no qualms in me about that. I'm of course Ian's fine with her. She's my friend.
Yeah.
And this real bond and just the beauty of that.
Yeah. It's
immediately.
We're in the sorority, and so we love the same thing. And when you start with that, when you have that in common, we love quilts and we love quilt making. It's I think that's huge. When you share a passion with someone, you do connect really quickly. You say, "What do you think about the quilt?" and off you are to the races. So
and even someone. If you're watching, I don't remember who it was, but it's one of the rock stars recently in Quilting Rock Stars. Her son was traveling and needed some help getting from point A to point B, and it just so happened that the person who stopped was a quilter. And so, of course, he immediately was like, I will be fine. This is a great situation. And, they talked quilting because he was like, my mom's a quilter. And, therefore, they were friends.
Right. Automatically.
Yep, the sisterhood.
It is a
Crosses
sisterhood.
oceans,
Well, that's what even Joann's, you know, you're standing there to buy your notions or get your fabric or whatever you're getting. And if someone's standing next to you with a pile of fabric, you're like, oh, what you making?
Yeah.
You know, and then you're talking. And I just think that's really fun. And it's just, again, we need ways to, I'm sorry, there's something just came on my screen. It's like, stop that.
Oh, yeah.
You can't see it, can you?
No, I can't.
You can just see me going, ooh.
It's okay, I do that all the time. I'm like, yeah. Or like John will start texting me and I'm like, go away.
Oh, this brave new world we find ourselves in. So yeah. So I love that. I do love the community, especially for me. I'm an introvert. So like after this conversation, I'll have to go lie down for a while and sniff some smelling salts. But so there are real, whoops. Hello. I'm such an introvert, I can't even look at you anymore. I'm done. No, but you know, so there's a beauty in online community. You can kind of decide how much you're going to enter into it or what you have energy for. It's nice. I can have lots and lots of friends and not be tired.
Yeah.
Or not shut down.
I love that, you know, I don't have to get a babysitter to hang out with my friends, or you know, if someone has mobility issues or just lives in an isolated community, they don't have to travel or figure out any of those related things in order to get to be part of this.
Yes,
you know?
That's right.
And I love that so much.
Yeah. Well,
and that I connect with friends all over the world that, you know, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have been friends, which is weird to me.
I know. And that's sometimes I think, do you ever think about what if the internet crashes? And
oh yeah, I would be like,
going to be, you know, well, we'll have to write letters again, which actually makes me really happy. I used to write so many letters. I have boxes of letters from my friends, like forever. But that's gone. That's over. But anyway, so that would be the one good thing about the internet crashing. We'd have to write each other letters, and we would have some.
But how would we get each other's addresses? Because we don't have.
Oh, right. We couldn't Google each other's addresses. We just had HollyAnne, Georgia.
Yeah, I'd have to go like digging through a bin somewhere to find a return label from you. Like,
yeah. That's so. Start writing down addresses now, ladies. Let's be ready for the apocalypse. But yeah, but it is weird. And people like, I don't, blogs are less of a thing, I guess, but even on Instagram, right? You connect with people, but in the past there were people whose blogs I followed and would comment and, you know, and there was also that relationship, and then they stopped blogging and it felt like a real loss because they were gone. Yeah. There was no, you know, a lot of times you don't know people's last names. You don't know how to get in touch with them, but you've had this vehicle for a friendship and then they disappear. And it really is, as I can think of, I was thinking about a woman in England this morning whose blog I loved. And she said, I always remember because she did a great post about if somebody calls and says they're coming over in 10 minutes, like how to clean up, what to book.
Oh, nice.
I'm like, yes, it was very helpful.
I need that.
She's like, make sure the toilet is clean and in the bathroom mirror. She's like,
check the toilet.
Yeah. But anyway, she stopped blogging. Like it's been 5 years and I still think about her and like wonder like, oh, her daughters must be grown up, but so anyway, but that speaks to, I think, the relationships that we develop and how real they are to us and how important that there's actually a kind of grieving when someone signs off. So
yeah, which is difficult. And I'm with you.
Yeah.
So with community and circling back to the community that's happening within Friendship Album 1933, what have you learned about quilting in the 30s that maybe is different than quilting now, or just like how it tied women together then pre-internet, all of those things? Well, you've been sharing this in the Quilt Fiction Club, and your ephemera is phenomenal. Like, I'm so impressed.
I love ephemera. I'll never get a tattoo, but that's probably the word I would choose. But anyway, to me, what's fascinating about quilting in the 1930s is there's so many parallels to quilting now. There were women making money. There, you know, so there were people like Marie Webster, and people who, if you follow Friendship Album, you know Florence, who is the youngest woman in the group, who has started the Milton Falls Quilting Company. And
I relate to Florence.
What's that?
I relate to Florence.
Yes, you are Florence. You are in so many ways, but just that entrepreneurial spirit And I don't know if this is true of you, but it may be. I feel like she's figuring it out as she goes along. You know, and I think that's true for any of us who start an enterprise. You know, it's like you kind of start out with some vague vision of what you want, and then you have, you know, and then you're like, oh, that's not it. It's over here. This is my purpose. This is my mission. And I think Florence is there. But anyway, there were a lot of women like Florence who had quilting catalogs, had Marie Webster was one of the most successful, and she started her business in the 20s, and I think she did it mostly out of her home with her best friends and her sisters, but they sold patterns and kits, and you know, I'm trying to think if they sold fabric or not. They may have, but and also made quilts for, you know, during the 20s and 30s, this was still the time of the colonial revival and home decor. So there was I have a theory that when times get hard, and I don't think this is a particularly original theory, that we get nostalgic for the mythical past, in which everyone was brave and true, and you know, and things were, you know, things were so much simpler, and things are never simple. We live in human bodies; they fail us, and we live with human people, and we fail them, and so there's no simple time, but we, you know, we lean on those stories for strength, and they did that. You know, the 20s and 30s is such an interesting time, not just the Depression, but the way that life was speeding up, which is also a parallel to now. Life is speeding up. It's like this internet thing. I mean, it's old. It's, you know, it's almost 30. In fact, so I remember, you know, sort of 94 when Clifton and I got married. That was the first time I think we had internet. It was scary, and I was always afraid that, you know, that you connected through your phone, and I was afraid that I hadn't disconnected and that our phone bill would be all of that. But it's still, it has in the last 10 years, and I think more with the smartphone, you know, it's crazy. It's so many technological changes are happening, and it speeds up and it speeds up. Well, that's how it felt at the, you know, the turn of the 20th century too. And you know, especially the 20s and 30s, the rural areas were being electrified. There was radio, cars. Think about how cars changed things. And you know, and of course, it's one of the like technologies. First, the rich people have them, and suddenly Henry Ford or Steve Jobs. I want to say Jobs. Old Testament girl here. But anyway, come along and they say, here, I'm going to make something for the masses. And do that. And it's great, and it's exciting, and it's overwhelming. And so we're like, I miss the old days when they didn't have machines. Like, and I think that sometimes, and then we get a huge snowstorm and the power goes out. I'm like, I can't do this. But anyway, so that's going on. And so we have this colonial revival where it's just sort of like the simple life, where women sat in front of the fire and made quilts out of necessity, which is one of those big quilt myths. You know, blankets are always cheaper. Quilts take so much time. But anyway, so that's one of the reasons that quilt making got so popular. It was also part of the decor. That was, of course, colonial homes were not filled with patchwork quilts. The patchwork quilt is like a later invention. But anyway, so that whole style was in style, and so people wanted quilts. But also I think there's that idea of sort of the soft covers for hard times, you know. And quilts are beautiful. One of the things that happens in the 20s is the Germans create fabric dyes that hold, that last, right? And all of a sudden you're getting these amazing fabrics. It's not just your indigo blue or your turkey red, but these amazing prints with fast dyes, and they're cheap, right? And that's another thing. We have this idea of the 1930s, the women were cutting up their shirts, and you know what? People did make quilts out of scraps, and people, you know, and they're people who did it as a make, do it, or mend kind of thing. I'm not going to go buy a blanket. I'm going to make this. But I think, you know, a lot of women bought fabric. Sears was sold these big fabric bundles, right? They're doing the same. We order our fabric online. They were ordering fabric through Sears. But it's this idea, you know, we're such symbolic creatures, and quilts symbolize home. They symbolize comfort. They're beautiful. So I think that's, that's one of the reasons that they were so popular during that time. It was hard times, and home was important, and comfort was important, and quilts have always signified comfort. And so I think it's interesting that in the 21st century, that the sort of modern maker, not just modern quilter, but modern maker movement really started up post 9/11. Because I think 9/11, a lot of people said, I'm going home, and I'm not leaving. I'm just staying here. But I remember it was about, I don't know, I would say it's probably about 2005 when I'm listening to a story on NPR about a woman who just wrote a book about aprons. And I think the zeitgeist thing is so interesting because I automatically was like, I need to make an apron. I never wore an apron. I don't know how to sew at this point, but I need an apron.
Yep.
What is that about? And some of it is nostalgia, and some of it is just it's feeding into some sort of hunger or desire. But I think it's interesting that there was a lot of the urban farming and the whole do-it-yourself stuff, and makers movement started up post 9/11, and part of that I think was this idea. It's a kind of comfort. It's about home, for a lot of people, and also it's like, well, what happens when all the power goes out, when the apocalypse comes? I need to be able to make my own butter. Yeah, that's gonna work.
Be prepared for this situation.
I'm gonna have a quilt, and I'm gonna have a chicken, and I'm gonna put some milk in a jar and shake it up till I have butter. Yeah. So anyway, so the 1930s.
Other necessities: quilts, butter.
And you're set. So anyway, the 30s, it's a fascinating time. There are the women's magazines, which were great in the 1930s. I've got a whole bundle of back issues of The Farmer's Wife. So smart, covering politics. It's like Letter from Berlin, The Farmer's Wife, Letter from Berlin. Our friends, the German girl, it's just, but also these great letters to the editor where people, and this kills me, another parallel. People are responding to letters from prior issues. It's like Twitter, but really, really slow.
And longer.
I love what so-and-so said about make, do, amend. And then the next person is like, enough with the martyrs. Quit martyring yourself. Go buy a new dress. And I'm just like, it's Twitter. Really slow. So anyway, these magazines are great, but they carry quilt patterns and ads for, buy this fabric or what have you, and quilt kits. And there are a number of needlework magazines. And just people were, and again, and it is a way of being in community with other people and gathering and, people and having something to do with your hands. And for me, it's like, that's the best way to be with other people when you're making stuff. I've worked, you go with your church group to work at the soup kitchen, and people who you've never been able to make small talk with, suddenly you're making stuff for lunch and you're chatting away. Yeah. Or when you do a sew-in with your quilt guild, it's the same thing. Everyone's just, oh, look, what are you making, and chatting, and there's just something about that is so much fun.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's interesting because when I was in high school, the knitting phase hit first before the sewing thing.
Yes, it did.
We all got bit hard. Well, me worst of all, as you might imagine, but we all got bit pretty hard by this knitting bug that started in middle school and carried on into high school. And so each year we would do a Christmas party at my parents' house, but it was a knitting party. Like everyone brought like beadwork or knitting or like whatever they were doing.
And that's so
HollyAnne. We were like old ladies at 16. Like I kid you not. It was the best. I'd connected with my handcrafting self early.
Yeah.
And we went around, and it was a way that kept us connected as these particular girls. We had grown up in this little church school together until 8th grade, and then we graduated and scattered into all of our public high schools. But we would come together every year at Christmas and do that. And it was the same thing of like, no matter kind of what was going on, we could gather around and work on these projects and reconnect.
Right.
Amazing.
And the other thing about those kind of circles, when you're sitting together knitting or sewing, it's like if you're having a quiet day, you can be quiet. Other people are going to talk, but you still get to be with other people. If you have a day when you need to vent, you can vent, and you've got a sympathetic audience. And so I think that's just kind of nice too. You can be whatever you are that day. You just can, because you're there. You have a purpose for being there. You're making the sock.
Yeah.
You know, so
I love it. I think it's interesting too, as you talked about the trends, both in the 30s and now, of kind of responding to difficult situations with handwork or creativity, some blend there. I think it's interesting now in our modern times as we're also starting to see science demonstrate how our anxiety level will lower in response to creative activity, and how something that we've obviously known instinctively for years and years and years is now actually kind of being girded up by the science of it, which we need more than ever in this kind of anxiety-prone, anxiety-inducing time in history, you know?
And there's, it's funny. You know, as you know, I'm on the board of the Quilt Alliance, and I'm doing we do a monthly web show called Story Bee. And yesterday I interviewed Joe Cunningham, who's an amazing quilter and just a really super interesting guy. And he doesn't do this as much anymore, but he was very into hand quilting. And he said, hand quilting is not like meditation. Hand quilting is meditation. And I was like, yeah. And I feel that way. I also knit. I just knit socks because they always fit somebody.
I love that. I love that.
But that's also, it is. And there's something that, as you say, the science is showing. There's something that's happening in the brain. And you know, what Joe was saying is like, you've got that, 10% of your brain that's working your hand, helping you make decisions and do the hand. And then the rest of it is just, you're just flying, the rest of your brain is just going, okay, I'll relax now. There's nothing for me to do. So I'm just going to chill. Travis.
And you can work out the other thing. Like last night, I had this kind of strategy question I was working on with kind of what's coming for String and Story in 2019 and stuff that I'm just kind of, as we head into, I'm in that stage of the year where I'm like, I'm here, but I'm also like 3 months out. And I'm trying to figure out like, where's this journey going for all of us, and how am I going to take us there? And I had been very tense about it for a couple of days, and John could kind of sense it, but wasn't really saying anything. And I was sitting on the floor in front of the fire last night for like 3 hours cutting out blocks. And finally at like hour 3, I all of a sudden was like, and just like it all started coming out. And he was like, where did that come from? And I'm like, I don't know. I think it was like, and then we like sat down and solved it, and it was fine. And it was just like, so I slept so great last night because I finally wasn't like.
I'm so happy.
It's that same thing, that repetitive,
No, and the brain, every once in a while, and then I'm gonna have to. Travis has gotten his bone under something, and he's
okay.
But so you'll have to take over for a second. But one of the most fascinating things to me is the role of the subconscious in the creative process, whether that or the problem solving process, which is the creative process, right? But I've done that sometimes where you're working. It's like you're walking, or you're knitting, or you're sewing, and that like aha moment comes, and you're not even focused on it. But there's something because you are otherwise occupied. But also, there have been times where I'm working on a story and I'm stuck, and so I'll just think about it right before I go to sleep. And then so often, as soon as I wake up, I'm like, oh, this is what needs to happen. I'm like, that's really cool. I didn't even have to do anything. I just had to sleep. All right, let me go. You chat. I'll be back. Travis, what are we doing?
Oh, this is so fabulous. Okay, so I'm thinking more about creative process. So I'm gonna share a little bit about my creative process. Then when Frances comes back, I'll bug her about hers. And if you have thoughts of creative process, drop them in the comments as we're going along. Stories related to this into your own life. I think one of the ways that I've been seeing this most frequently for me in the last, I've noticed it very specifically in the last 3 or 4 months, is the value of making sure that I guard time to be actually sewing, and how fun that is. And I love watching those aha moments happen. So often, I have 2 little kids. I love writing patterns. I love teaching. I'm passionate about all of these things, but guarding that actual sewing time to allow these things to happen. And I love to have, especially sewing time late at night when my brain gets into that lull and I can have kind of the magic. So Frances, what is you're a morning creative person, while I'm a night creative person. So what does your creative process look like with writing, but also with quilting?
Well, I'm a morning writing person. I'm a night quilting person. I have a weird thing where I get a second wind after 8 o'clock, and that's where I do a lot of my quilting. but the process is all, but in the morning I have more energy. Travis Dow, enough. Anyway, I have more energy, and I have the most creative. I mean, the most focused creativity. So I just that's when I have to write. Yeah, but the process is the same with quilting and writing, whatever I'm doing. I just make things up and see if they work. So I never know how. I may know what the next step in the story is, like the next piece of business is going to take place, but I never know how story is going to end. And unless I'm working using a pattern for a quilt, which I don't do very often, but I am particularly. I'm trying to make some quilts that go along with the friendship album story. So I'm using traditional blocks, and there's not much to putting the quilt. You make the block and you put the quilt together. But I also do a lot of modern quilts, and those are much more improvised. And I love that process. And so I do most of my designing on the wall, and see, I put stuff up. I stick it up and put something next to it and see if I like it. And so it's similar, and I may, with the story as with the quilt, I may have some basic elements. I know where the story takes place. I know something about the time it's in. I know, but and something about the characters who are making up the story. In the same way with the quilt, I have an idea that I want to do something very wild and improvised, or something with bias tape, or something that is traditional but funky, or whatever, and I know what fabrics I'm going to use, maybe.
Sort of, sometimes.
So I have some elements to work with, and that's good, because if you don't have some restrictions, that's crazy making.
Yeah.
So it's good to
work within rules.
What's that?
I always work within rules.
It's a good idea. You might break some of them even, but to start out with, say, these are the precepts here. I'm going to use this fabric. I want to make it wouldn't be unusual for me to say, oh, I really like that painting, or I want, and so that Rothko, that Rauschenberg, whatever. I want to make something, not necessarily a copy of that, but the way that painting makes me feel, that's what I want to make. And I'm going to use these colors. But to have some sort of structure, I think is very freeing.
Yeah. Well, and this is how, the collection that I most recently released that we're giving away patterns from, the Winter Hexagon collection, that's how it became what it is I was like, I have to have like a theme here. And I prefer to kind of do my designing in cycles. I admire designers who have like one new pattern each month. Like my brain doesn't work like that, because then I'm constantly in like design mode and make mode. And I like let's just batch this together. And so I ultimately was like, okay, we're going to do stars. I'm really feeling stars this fall and winter. And I'm like, we're going to just tie all that together, and that became the basis of where everything was going. And then as I discovered, the Winter Hexagon asterism, then I was like, well, let's create quilts that tell stories about these particular stars.
Right. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
It's all stories anyway, like even in the quilts. Yeah, exactly. I love it.
Yeah.
You are very good at editing. I am not very good at editing.
I love it. I'm very good at revising. That's my whole, that's my writing is revising. That's all it is for me. Yeah. Because it's a necessity, because I do such bad first drafts of books and quilts, but it's also freeing to go, okay, I'm just getting something down on paper, and I know I can make it better. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be that good, as long as there's a spark of life. That's the only thing. And that's always the depressing thing. I have this new Christmas story that I was telling you about. Yeah. But I tried a couple other stories before that, and I was really excited about them. And one of them in particular, I thought, oh, this is an amazing story. And then one day I just realized it was dead. And I'm like, what happened? It died. But it did. It did. Yeah. And once that happens, they're very hard to revive. But then when I started writing the story, partly I got the idea. It's like, why don't I write a story with these characters that I really know very well from the Friendship Album book? I know these characters. This would be fun to put them in this particular scene and see what happens. And this story takes place before the novel starts, like just a month or two before the novel starts. So that was really fun to do. And then suddenly it's like, oh, this is alive. And so but I didn't have to make it perfect the first time around, just as long as I kept it alive, you know. But quilts are like that too. And that was an interesting thing to talk to Joe Cunningham about yesterday was, did he ever fail? Did he ever start a quilt and just go? And he said, no, he always finished them. And then, but there were some he just kind of put away. He knew it wasn't a good quilt.
I die on the cutting table, man. I like get stuff to like start cutting, and then I look down and I'm like, yep, nope, this isn't actually gonna happen.
Yeah, that's me too. I am willing to give up. It is exciting to try to push it with a quilt, just to go, okay, I'm going to do something totally daring. I'm going to cut this up and just see. Because if that doesn't work, well, the quilt wasn't working anyway. But sometimes that you can revive it. But yeah, you can look oftentimes, and particularly if you walk into the room and it's on your board and you're like, I don't even love you anymore.
Well, and I have a lot of quilts that will go into hibernation for a while, that will reach a point together, and the quilt, where the quilt needs to go, and either where my skill set or where my interest is are not in parallel.
That's right.
So I'm like, oh, we're going to hibernate until we're in vibe again. And then we'll continue this.
And I've had that with stories. I've had novels that I've put away. Like I've written 125 pages and just like, and it's not, you know, and I still like it. So it hasn't died. And I know, but you get to an impasse. And I think what you said is really smart, that sometimes you don't have the skills you need at that moment to continue. And so, but when you come back to it, whether it's 6 months later or 2 years later, you've learned something during that time. You're like, oh, now I know what to do with this. And I like that idea with quilts too, that you can get to a place where it's like, I don't know what to do with it. It's not dead, but I'm stuck. But and then you let it hibernate, and who knows, and you'll come back to it with new energy. So I'm not, you know, people get, sometimes, I mean, it's more of a joke than anything when people talk about their UFOs, but sometimes I think there's a little bit of anxiety, like this year, 2019, I'm finishing up all my UFOs. I'm like, you know.
I have a lot of anxiety about my UFOs right now, but.
Do you really? But you know, I mean, I guess it depends. And because I know you quilt for love, but you also, it's your business. So that could bring a different set of expectations.
Well, and it means that the quilts that I'm making for love often have to wait. They have to wait their turn. And I have a number of them right now that I had put into hibernation, but I have like 6 that are ready to come out of hibernation, and I'm ready to bring them out, but like my to-do list and that desire haven't like synced yet. Right. So they're coming. There will be things resurfacing here in the next couple of months. It's just not there yet.
And I think it's right not to push it. There has to be some sort of Zen state, you know. Because we can ruin things when we work on them when, you know, we shouldn't be. All kinds of things.
My children are going to be home soon, so I'm going to wrap this up.
Well, it's been great talking to you.
Will you remind everyone where they can find you, about the giveaway, all of the things?
Okay, all the things. So you can find, there's so many places. I feel like I have so many weird identities. But mainly I'm Frances O'Rourke Dowell. You can find me at Quilt Fiction. You can find me if you go to iTunes, there are 2 places you can find me. I actually also do just a quilting podcast where I'm chatting and talking about quilts and books, and Travis is often there, less irritable and irritating than he's been today. But and that's called The Off Kilter Quilt. But if you want to listen to this story, this novel, which now there's probably close to 20 hours of audio,
which is amazing.
So you would go to the Quilt Fiction podcast, and it's Friendship Album 1933. It's the only story in there. You can, if you want to know more about Quilt Fiction, if you want to go through you can also go to the Quilt Fiction website, which is just quiltfiction.com. And you can learn more about my other books. You can follow the blog in which I post about the episodes, but also post stuff about the 1930s and various things. So, and then there's a Quilt Fiction page on Facebook. And if you really want to have a good time, join the club. This club is amazing.
It's pretty fun.
It's very fun. We play. It's a really kind of playful space, which I'm enjoying. It feels like, you know, because people, like yesterday for the bee, I said, all right, it's like, it was at Florence's house. She's one of the characters. I'm like, here's what Florence is wearing. What are you wearing? And people posted these amazing pictures of 1930s dresses. And we had so much fun. You know, so and some people posted pictures. Oh, this is a picture of my grandmother. Again, that's how we got into the grandmother theme today. you know, a picture of her in 1930s. I think I'll wear her dress. So it's a really playful, fun space. So
I
you can
love
go
it.
there. So I'm kind of all over the place. And if you need a book for your kid for Christmas, I'm on Amazon.com.
That's true. So middle grade fiction, lots of Sam the Man books.
Yeah.
I'm like dying for my children to be old enough for Sam the
They're
Man.
getting there. They're almost there.
When will they be old enough for me to read it to them?
Yeah. Now, how old is your oldest? How?
Jim turned 4 on Christmas.
Okay. I'll send you one and you'll see if you like it.
We'll give it a shot. I'm ready for him to start learning to read, so I'm like, okay, I need to be more proactive about reading non-picture books and starting to really get words in front of him well, and to expand his comprehension so that he can start connecting words and words, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I tried to get him to sound something out the other day, and he was like, you tell me. You have no idea the freedom and joy on the other side of this challenge.
Oh, the great thing, I miss the days when my children wanted me to read to them. And what was nice with my younger son, Will, is he wanted me to read to him both of them, long after they learned to read. But yeah, it's exciting when they make that breakthrough. And I'm excited for that. Yeah.
I'm having visions of when, so, you know, I'm in the library right now, and John has a computer over there, and there's a couch to my left, and my sewing machines. I'm having visions of when, like, Christmas time looks like the kids sprawled on the floor on the couch with, like, books and whatever, and not tearing apart my Christmas tree. Yeah. And John with his computer, and me on my sewing machine, and, like, but they have to read for my vision to come. For that. So.
Yes. Good luck with it.
I'm like, I have an agenda here of this perfect Christmas, like, moment.
Yeah. And, you know, we've had some of those over the years. That's one of my favorite things. Yeah, when we're all just hanging out around the tree reading or looking at new stuff. So that'll happen.
I'm looking forward to it. It's coming.
It's coming.
All right, everybody, make sure as well that you answer the question of the day about podcasts and books that you love to listen to while you're sewing to be entered to win a copy of Margaret Goes Modern and a copy of Birds in the Air. And this, Frances, is this correct? U.S. only for these two right now?
Yeah, I need to check whether we could do something digitally. We are working on the technology through this book funnel program that eventually we would be able to, because I would love to be able to give stuff away to, you know, international folks. But so for right now, print only. But if I figure out a way, we'll do a giveaway a little later just for international people.
We'll have an encore.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. That sounds wonderful. Frances, thank you so much for joining me today, guys. Don't forget to go follow her and like all the things and subscribe to the podcast and like this video and share this video and hang out. Yeah. I will be back with you guys inside the Quilting Rockstars Facebook group tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to work on whatever clue we're on for Body Hunter's Mystery. I think it's 4. I don't really know anymore. We'll be working on approximately a frillion of something together tomorrow night. And I will be goofy and probably have technology issues then too. So, you know, if you liked this, then you'll like that. Yeah. All right. Frances, thank you so much.
Thanks, HollyAnne. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.